Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. A few days ago I published a video about our experience with unschooling. And I always seem to get a lot of interest, both here on my channel and on my blog, about unschooling. People just are really intrigued by it and they want to know what to expect from it if they would ever decide to do it. And while I am certainly not like the ultimate authority on unschooling, I did learn some things from our experience with it. So today I'm going to share with you some pros and cons of unschooling. This list that I have here today is by no means exhaustive. It's just a few things that I picked up from what we learned while we were doing it, or it's just things that I heard from other people who were also unschooling that I might not have personally experienced, but that others have. And I really just want to provide this for you as a resource for if you decide that you are going to try unschooling, you will have some idea of the things that you might encounter, both good and bad. And so I want to start out this video on a positive note. So I am going to start out with some pros of unschooling. And the first one is that children are given the opportunity to focus on their strengths and interests. You know, how often when kids are doing school, both in a traditional homeschool setting or in, a public or private school, very often it seems like it is a child's weaknesses that are constantly getting focused on. They're constantly being told to work harder, work harder, work harder. And very often their strengths or the things that they're really, really interested in are pushed to the side. And this can really be a huge mistake because most parents who have actually sat and observed their kids learn realize that kids learn best when they're interested in something. And they also learn best when they are given an opportunity to just use the strengths that they have. And I'm not saying that weaknesses should never be touched on, but very, very often what happens is when kids are able to pursue their interests or when they are able to do the things that they are really good at, they will undoubtedly come up with some things that they want to do that are going to require those things that they just aren't good at. And that is going to give them a real reason to want to work on them, not just because someone else is telling them to, or someone else, a teacher is telling them you're going to get a bad grade on this if you don't work harder. They have a real practical reason for wanting to do it. And even we adults, when we have a real reason for needing to know how to figure something out, we're far more likely to get it done better if there's an actual need for it. Now, the second pro of unschooling that I have for you today is that there is no power struggle over completing schoolwork. And again, this can go for either a traditional homeschool setting or it could go for, a traditional school setting like public school, private school, anything. And when I say traditional homeschool setting today, I am not just referring to school at home. I'm referring to any homeschool approach that is not unschooling. Because every other homeschooling approach requires at least a little bit of structure, a little bit of parent-led learning. And when it comes to unschooling, that power struggle is just, it's not there. And even as a homeschooling mom, I know that there are times that my kids, they don't want to do their math, or they might not be in the mood for notebooking. Or, how many other times have other homeschooling parents been saying that their kids, they don't ever want to write their reports for them? Or, their kids get really upset over taking tests. Or they just don't seem like they're applying themselves to that actual schoolwork. And in unschooling, there is no work like that unless a child wants to do it. And this is not a cop-out for kids saying that they just don't have to do anything when they're unschooling, because kids who are given the freedom to pursue their interests are often very, very busy doing very productive things, but they are typically things that do not look like school. And so since unschooling is really about letting a child's learning be self-directed, that really it can help a parent-child relationship. I will get to a con of this a little bit later, but very often it can really help with a parent-child relationship because you don't have that constant bickering, the constant nagging of getting the schoolwork done. So a third pro of unschooling is that there is little preparation. You know, one of the things that a lot of homeschooling parents say is that their children's curriculums or their unit studies or whatever it is that they're doing requires so much preparation time. You know, whether it's about writing lesson plans or researching curriculum or going to the library and finding all of the books that they need or going to the craft store and getting everything that they need to do a project that they're working on. And preparation time is one thing that I know holds a lot of people back from homeschooling because they think that they just wouldn't have the time to do it. You know, and when it comes to unschooling, there is very little preparation. The only preparation that is required in an unschooling atmosphere is just for a parent to make sure that they have lots of interesting things around their house, that they are always available for answering questions, that they set time aside maybe to take their kids to places that they would like to go visit because it's something that they would like to learn about, whether it's just stopping what they're doing and going to the library. It really does cut a lot of that extra time that parents put into planning just almost into nothing. Again, the only thing that is really required in preparation time, I would say, is you want to have lots and lots of fun, interesting things around your house that your kids will likely pick up and will want to do on their own. This is called strewing. Strewing is just kind of leaving things out around your house, and it's not that you're showing it to your kids and saying, I want you to do this because I bought it because it's something that, you know, you're interested in. It's not like that. What it is as an unschooling parent, you're very often attuned to what your child really, really wants to know about. And so a lot of times while you're out and about, you will pick up things that you think that your kids would really enjoy, whether it would be a book, a puzzle, some sort of craft kit, or maybe a little science experiment book, anything. It could be anything at all. And just leave them around your house. Let your kids know that they're there. Sometimes you don't even have to do that verbally. You know, if you leave it in a place where they're likely to see it, of course, you know, it's going to catch their eye. But I would also point out that leaving it out in the open is very important because if you get a bunch of interesting books that you think your kids would enjoy, if you just push them onto a shelf with a bunch of other books, chances are that your child might not ever notice them, or they might not ever remember to read those books if they don't have that reminder of visually seeing them all the time. So an important thing with strewing is keeping things out in the open so that kids remember that they're there. And the fourth pro of unschooling that I want to share with you today is that children who are given more freedom are often better able to think for themselves. And this is a big one for me, and I have talked about it several times because I think that a lot of us have noticed that students today, whether school students, college students, even some adults, it seems they have completely lost the ability to think for themselves. And this happens very often because in school, information is being poured into their brains. You know, they are never given the opportunity to actually actively go out and find out about things that they want to. They're just being fed facts all the time. And kids who are unschooled have the exact opposite of that. They are able to go out there, research the things that they want to, or choose to ignore the things that they don't want to learn about. But when it comes down to it, unschooled children very, very often have really great critical thinking skills because they are given that freedom to not just have to memorize what an authority figure is telling them. And that is such an important skill for people to have. So now we're going to get into the cons of unschooling. And I want to point out that even though I'm saying that these are cons of unschooling, a lot of the things that I'm saying, and there's not many, there's only 4, they are things that you could work on and possibly get them to actually be okay. If you would like to really try unschooling, you can always tweak things and see how you can get them to work for you. But these are some cons that either I or other people have found when they were unschooling that, you know, I think that it's important that people realize. So the first con is that the lack of structure may not work well for some children or even for some families. And this was a big one for us. This was like a major reason that we did not completely continue on with unschooling, even though I think that self-directed learning for kids is honestly the best way for them to learn. Just the complete lack of structure for us, it wasn't good. You know, I have 11 kids, and yeah, I only have 9 kids at home now, but when we were unschooling, I had 10 kids at home yet, and we really needed to have a basic routine. And over time, it really caused a lot of chaos in our house. And you know, my kids, they really seem to enjoy knowing that we have a particular rhythm to our day. They also really just, I think that it gives them comfort, you know, because they know what to expect. And of course, things will arise because as life does, but they know basically what is going to happen each day. And just that little bit of structure is kind of the glue that holds our family together. So it was really important for us to have that in our homeschool. A second con is that it can be difficult to assess learning. And this is something that I hear from parents a lot. In unschooling, the way that parents typically will assess their child's learning is just through everyday conversations with their kids. It's through just observing their kids, watching how they grow in certain areas. There are no tests. There are no reports. There is no written way to assess what a child is doing in an unschooling atmosphere. And for some parents, that's perfectly fine. They are perfectly happy just seeing it in real life. But there are others who really do like the benefit of having a checklist of things that they can check off for their child, especially when it comes to transcripts. That's something that I hear about all the time is transcripts. How do you write transcripts for an unschooler? Because yes, there are unschoolers who go out to college. So having that, you know, the checklist or having that structured learning, it will make something like transcripts much easier for a parent. That is not to say that unschooling is absolutely not conducive to transcripts at all. Parents do it all the time. I will actually link to a blog post on the Unschool Rules website that I always send people to about transcripts for a relaxed homeschool or an unschool because it is awesome. She gives such fantastic advice on transcripts. So I will send you there again in the description box if you would like to unschool but are a little bit leery about transcripts. But one thing that I do have to say when it comes to this is, if you truly want to try unschooling, and if you really think that it's a way that your kids will learn best, are you willing to push that aside just for the transcripts? You know, is your educational approach worth completely transforming into something that probably isn't going to work for your kids just so that you can have that piece of paper to hand to the college, just to make it easier? So that's something that you really want to think about. Now, the third con that I have is that some children prefer their parents to lead them, and other kids just aren't motivated enough. And I know you will very often, we'll talk about the kids who aren't motivated enough, because that is also something that I have comments about all the time. And you know what? You will see on a lot of unschooling blog posts or unschooling articles, unschooling podcasts, they will talk about how unschooling really can work for every child, and that a lot of the reasons that kids are not motivated is because they have just been completely stripped of their curiosity because of constantly being fed that information, what I was talking about. And I completely agree with that. I truly believe that there are a lot of things in our society today that are taking away kids' imagination, it's taking away their initiative, and yeah, it's taking away their motivation to want to do anything. But the thing is that even though you could give your child time to get over that, the fact is that some kids can take years to get over that. And I don't know of many parents who would be willing to just let their child be unmotivated for 2 years that they're supposed to be unschooling, hoping that they're going to just break out of that and start doing things. So when it comes to things like that, yes, you know, as a parent, you have to know when to draw the line, and you have to know when to say, okay, I think it's time that I step in and I start doing something to help this situation, because we can't keep going on this way. So yeah, I think that there are times that kids who are not motivated, if they're not seeming to get better over a pretty extended period of time, they do need that the parents leading them. They honestly do. And as for kids wanting their parents to actually do school with them, this is something that I experienced with my kids. They actually, while we were unschooling, they kept asking me all the time, Mom, can we please start doing school again? And I was just so dead set on getting this unschooling thing perfectly right that I was trying everything that I could to not do school with them when I should have listened to what my children needed. And thankfully I did after a while. But this isn't something that I mentioned in my other video. You should not feel like a failure if your kids are asking you to do school with them, because that is actually something that happened to me. I mentioned in a group that my kids were asking me to actually do school with them, and they said to me that I must be doing something wrong because no child would ever ask to actually do school. And that wasn't true. My kids were asking, and I was doing everything that I could to support their learning in an unschooling manner. And again, it may have had a lot to do with that structure. It may have been that they just enjoyed that time with me, you know, and a lot of kids might enjoy that time with their parents, you know, sitting down one-on-one with them, or maybe with their siblings, learning together, or getting ideas for different topics from their parents, getting that perspective, just making those memories as a family. It's okay if a child wants to do that. And I think that it's really important to remember that. And the last con that I'm going to go over with you today for unschooling is that there are certain things in life that need to be addressed at some point, you know, like reading. And although I know that there are children who have learned to read on their own, my 11-year-old, he pretty much taught himself how to read. He didn't like phonics. I tried doing it with him for a little bit. He would sit and cry, would refuse to do it. So I actually decided to take a break from phonics for a while. And about a month later, I went up to his room and I found him reading a book to himself. So yes, there are kids who can teach themselves to read. Not all kids do though. And so this is one of those things that you have to know when to step in. If your child is getting older, you know, and I don't mean like 7 or 8, because all kids learn on their own timeline. But say, for example, if your child is like 10 or 11 and still not reading, it might be time to step in and start doing some structured learning with your child, or even maybe getting outside help, like from a tutor. There are times that you might need to do that. Same thing with like math skills. Again, a lot of kids might pick that up in everyday life. Some kids might not. And this can be extended to a number of different things that are crucial to have in real life, like to be able to have clarity when they're writing, or spelling. Some kids are natural spellers. They're just naturally good at it. Others are not. And they might need some, what's the word I'm looking for? Intentional practice on spelling. And so none of these things make you a failure if you're unschooling your kids and you find that your child is needing help on these things. But it is something that I think can make you feel like you're not succeeding in this particular homeschooling style, when I think it is so important to remember that, you know, it's about your kids. It's not about adhering to one particular method. If not everything works that comes from that method, it's okay. You know, no one's gonna knock at your door and say, you're doing this wrong, you are a failure to unschooling, don't ever call yourself an unschooler again. That's not gonna happen. You know, what comes first and foremost is you doing what your kids need. That is what it's about. It's not about impressing other unschoolers or other homeschoolers and just telling them that your kids don't do any sort of structured learning at all, because some kids need it. Some kids need that push, and it is okay. So anyway, that is all that I have for you today. I hope that it clarified a little bit of good things and the bad things about unschooling. But again, I want to point out with some of the negative things about unschooling, they can be tweaked, they can be worked on if you really would like to try it. But I really want to stress to you is don't push it to the point that it's hurting your kids just because you want to try this method so hard. Listen to what your kids need. Always do that. So anyway, again, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. And if you like my work, I encourage you to check out my Patreon page and see what rewards I have for my patrons there. I am not sure if I'm going to get another video done before Christmas. So just in case if I don't, I just want to tell all of you that I appreciate you so much. You have given me purpose. For the longest time, I was saying that I didn't know what God wanted for me. I felt like I had nothing to offer. And so just being able to encourage you and just being able to go back and forth with you has really helped me to understand that, you know, God has given me a gift, and I am more than happy to use it with all of you. And again, I appreciate all of you so much, and I hope you have a great night. Merry Christmas.